The night was too quiet. Police cars lined the narrow street, their red and blue lights flashing against the walls of the abandoned warehouse where the murder had taken place just hours before. Reporters had left. Neighbors had gone back inside. Even the detectives were packing up, tired after searching every corner, and then, someone walked out of the shadows. At first, the two officers standing guard thought it was another detective. The man wore a dark jacket, hands stuffed in his pockets, head slightly lowered. He moved slowly, almost casually, as if the scene belonged to him, but when the light hit his face, both officers froze. It was him, the man whose picture had been printed on wanted posters. The man every cop in the county had been hunting since the brutal killing. The man who wasn't supposed to be anywhere near here. The killer had come back to the scene of his crime, his lips curled into a strange smile as he looked around the warehouse, almost like he was admiring his work. The air grew heavy. Neither officer spoke. Neither moved. The silence was unbearable, and then, he raised his hand, something glinted between his fingers. A knife. The same weapon he had used before, the officers shouted, their voices cracking through the night, but before anyone could stop him, the killer ran straight back into the warehouse. The scene of the crime was no longer just a memory. It was alive again. Now let's go back. Earlier that same day, the small town of Grayridge had been shaken to its core. The murder had taken place inside the old Branson warehouse, a building long abandoned after the factory closed down. Everyone in town knew it was dangerous, a place for trouble, but nobody expected it to become a killing ground. The victim was a local woman named Rachel Miller. She was young, kind, and worked as a schoolteacher at the elementary school just 3 blocks away. She had no enemies, no debts, no reason anyone would want her dead. And yet, hours before, she was found lying on the cold concrete floor of that warehouse. Detective Alan Hayes, a man with sharp eyes and years of experience, stood over the body when it was discovered. He had seen many cases before, but something about this one felt different. The scene wasn't messy. It wasn't rushed. Whoever killed Rachel had taken his time. Next to her body was something even stranger. A single folded piece of paper with 4 words written in black marker, "I will come back." At first, the detectives thought it was a cruel trick, maybe even a way to confuse them. But by the time night fell, those words started to feel like a warning. Neighbors talked nervously on their porches. Parents kept their kids inside. Police warned everyone to lock their doors. The town of Grayridge had always been quiet, the kind of place where crime was rare. But now fear had spread like wildfire. Detective Hayes led his team through the warehouse. They checked every corner, photographed every detail, collected every piece of evidence. But the paper note stayed in his mind. He couldn't shake it. It felt like a promise. As the day stretched into night, the warehouse became quiet again. The officers outside leaned on their cars, sipping coffee, waiting for orders to clear out. Hayes was about to leave when something caught his attention. A sound was faint, but clear enough. A slow set of footsteps echoing against the concrete floor. Hayes froze. His flashlight beam swept across the warehouse, catching nothing but empty walls. But the sound didn't stop. One of the officers called out, "Detective, you hear that?" Before Hayes could answer, the footsteps grew louder. Closer, then, in the doorway of the warehouse, a figure appeared. A tall man, his jacket dark, his face half hidden. In the shadows, Hayes's heart sank. The note. The promise. The killer had returned, and this time, he wasn't running away. He was walking straight toward them. The warehouse fell into chaos the moment the figure stepped into the doorway. Flashlights hit him all at once, beams bouncing across his shadowy frame. The air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. Detective Alan Hayes raised his voice, steady but tense. "Drop the weapon. Hands where I can see them." But the man didn't drop anything. Instead, he tilted his head, as if mocking the command. The knife in his right hand gleamed under the flashing lights outside. The metallic shine was enough to send a ripple of panic through the officers. For a moment, no one moved. The killer simply stood there, watching. His chest rose and fell slowly, almost calmly, as if this entire scene, police, guns, flashlights, was part of a game. Then, without warning, he bolted deeper into the warehouse. "Move, move." Hayes barked, the officers sprinted after him, boots slamming against the old wooden floors. Their flashlights sliced through dust clouds, chasing his shadow between stacks of rusting machinery. Every sound echoed tenfold in the cavernous building: the scrape of shoes, the slam of a door, the pounding of a dozen frantic hearts. The killer was fast. Too fast that he slipped through a side corridor, his figure darting in and out of the beams of light. The officers followed, but each corner they turned left them one step behind. It was like chasing a ghost. Then came the sound that made everyone freeze. A laugh, low, hollow, echoing off the metal walls. It wasn't the laugh of someone nervous or desperate. It was calm, deliberate. Like he wanted them to know exactly where he was. "Sheriff, he's playing with us," one officer muttered. Hayes ignored him, gripping his flashlight tighter. "Stay sharp. He's not walking out of here again." They reached a heavy steel door at the far end of the warehouse. It creaked when they pushed it open, revealing a narrow stairwell that spiraled down into the basement. The air grew colder immediately, damp and heavy with mildew. The light barely touched the bottom. Hayes led the way, gun raised. Each step groaned under their weight. The deeper they went, the more suffocating the air became. At the bottom of the stairs, they found another room. It was smaller, lined with shelves and broken crates. A single light bulb swung from the ceiling, flickering weakly, but the killer was nowhere in sight. Only a chair sat in the center of the room. On the chair rested something that made Hayes' stomach twist. A fresh bouquet of white lilies, the exact same flowers that had been found next to Rachel Miller's body. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered, "How could he have set this up? We've been here all night." Hayes bent down, his flashlight hovering over the flowers. The stems were wet, freshly cut. Someone had placed them here only minutes earlier, and then he noticed the note tucked beneath them. 4 words again, written in the same thick black marker: "You are too late." Hayes' jaw clenched. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just a killer. He was a planner, someone who moved ahead of them, staying one step out of reach. Before anyone could speak, a loud bang echoed above them. Something heavy had fallen on the warehouse floor. Then another sound followed, metal scraping, as though machinery was being dragged. The officers rushed back up the stairs, but the moment they burst into the main floor, their flashlights revealed something terrifying. The killer had been busy. Every exit door was now chained shut from the inside. Thick metal chains wrapped tightly across handles, padlocked in place. They were trapped. Jesus, how did he? Hayes cut the officer off. "Eyes up. He's still here." The sound of footsteps echoed again, this time circling them from above. They pointed their flashlights upward, toward the rusted metal catwalks that lined the warehouse ceiling. There he was. Darkness swallowed the warehouse whole. The hum of the fluorescent lights was gone, leaving only silence, and the sharp breaths of the men inside. Officers gripped their flashlights like lifelines, beams jerking wildly across the vast space. Dust floated through the air, caught in the trembling circles of light. Then came the footsteps, not steady, but circling, moving above them on the catwalk. The killer was walking slowly, deliberately, like a predator choosing which prey to strike first. Each metallic creak of the catwalk echoed through the darkness. "Hold your ground." Detective Hayes barked, his voice firm though his pulse hammered in his ears. One officer muttered, almost to himself, "He's hunting us." The words felt too true. Hayes directed his flashlight upward, but the beam only caught glimpses of movement: an elbow, the edge of a boot, a shadow that seemed to vanish the second it was seen. The killer was there, but never in full view. Always one step ahead. Suddenly, a crash erupted from the far side of the warehouse. Metal pipes tumbled to the floor with a deafening clang, scattering across the ground. Officers whipped their lights toward the noise, weapons raised, but the killer wasn't there. He was using the sound to toy with them. Another noise followed, this one closer. A sharp screech of metal, like a blade dragging across steel. The sound made everyone's skin crawl. Hayes' jaw clenched. He wasn't going to let this man run circles around them again. "Brooks, take 2 men. Watch the west exit. Jackson, cover the back. Nobody moves alone." They fanned out, flashlights bouncing across dusty machinery and broken crates. The warehouse, already massive, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and hiding places. Every corner seemed alive, every flicker of light a possible threat. Then came a voice, not shouted, not panicked, calm, confident, from S. Somewhere above, the killer spoke. "You shouldn't have come back here." The words echoed, distorted by the empty space. No one could pinpoint where they came from. Hayes froze, his flashlight cutting upward, scanning every inch of the catwalk. "Show yourself." The killer didn't. Instead, he laughed again, low, mocking, and the sound faded into silence. For a moment, the only thing they heard was the thudding of their own hearts. Then an officer screamed. Flashlights whipped around to the source. Officer Daniel stumbled backward, his beam shaking wildly as it landed on something hanging from the catwalk above. A mannequin, dressed in a police uniform, its head tilted to the side, a grotesque smile painted across its face. Its hands were bound, dangling limply in the beam of light. The officers froze, unsure whether to be relieved it wasn't a real body, or horrified that it was even there at all. Daniel's voice cracked. He hung this here. How long has he been planning this?" Hayes stared at the mannequin, his gut twisting. It wasn't just a prop. It was a message, and the message was clear. The killer wasn't afraid of them. He was mocking them. "Stay focused," Hayes ordered. "That means he's close." They pressed deeper into the warehouse, beams sweeping across towering stacks of crates. Hayes could feel it. The killer was driving them where he wanted. Herding them like cattle. Then, without warning, every flashlight flickered. Not all at once, but one by one, until half the beam sputtered out completely. The officers cursed, banging their flashlights, trying to get them back on. But Hayes realized what was happening before anyone else. The killer had cut the power. He'd also tampered with their batteries. They weren't in control. He was, and that's when the second trap revealed itself. A loud metallic snap echoed, followed by the screech of something heavy sliding. A massive steel door, one of the internal barriers used back when the warehouse was operational, came slamming down from the ceiling.